Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to SmartLogic's webinar, Semantic Data Catalogs, A New Route to Value. My name is Ann Kelly, and I'm your host today. And with me is Steve Ingram, who's part of our Solution Architecture Leadership team, and John Lukasiewicz, who is a Vice President of Strategic Accounts, both from SmartLogic. A few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is in broadcast mode, and all of you are muted. If you have a question, please put it in the GoToWebinar panel, which you should see on the right-hand side of your screen. To set expectations, we'll have about 45 to 50 minutes worth of content today, and then we'll open it up for Q&A, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can during that time. And finally, this broadcast is being recorded. Everyone who's registered for the webinar will receive replay information one day following the broadcast. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to John.
Thanks, Ann, and thank you to everyone who registered today and is attending this broadcast. I just wanted to spend a minute or two before we get started going over the agenda, give you an idea where we'll spend the next 50 to 60 minutes or so. First of all, for those that don't know us, I'm just going to briefly cover the SmartLogic story, who we are, what our focus is, and the importance of metadata in that focus. Then we'll transition over to the role of semantics in the way we approach metadata, and we'll talk about the main topic for today, the semantic data catalog. And you'll get a chance to see one of my colleagues, Steve Ingram, who's joined us today, demonstrate the building of a semantic data catalog on our Semaphore platform. And then at the end, if everything goes well, we'll still have plenty of time for Q&A. So with that, let me get into it and talk a little bit about SmartLogic. First of all, we've been around for a while. We just didn't, create a company when everybody started writing about artificial intelligence and machine learning and semantics. We've been around since 2006 when we were asked to tackle a business problem for one of the world's largest news agencies. Put simply, they had a problem with trying to categorize their content and trying to do it in real time. And we developed a technology and one that would be maintainable over time for them that would enable them to categorize their news stories and do it very, very quickly, accurately, and consistently, so that it then could be indexed properly and routed to the appropriate news desk. Since that time, we've probably done at least 350 projects over the last 15 years for a couple of hundred Global 2000 organizations. And because of that success, we've been recognized by Gartner as a leader in their metadata management Magic Quadrant. Being in that Magic Quadrant for the last 4 years, I think is a great credential. But the important takeaway there is not just that we're in the Magic Quadrant as a leader, it's the why of it. And the why here is really important because it's all about our different approach, if you will, to metadata management. Our approach really is much more business focused, focused on solving solutions and solving business problems, and applying semantic technologies in a way that's maintainable and transparent to your organization. SmartLogic tries to not just deal with the static metadata, if you will, that everybody is familiar with, but also with other forms of metadata that are frankly just as important, and we'll talk about that a little more in a moment. So our focus, as I said, is on business solutions and applying semantic and machine learning technologies to them. That gives us an ability to really tap into the value of metadata, as well as to solve business problems, I think, much faster than through other approaches. And those problems can be very diverse. We see metadata really as an enabler of enterprise initiatives. And those initiatives can be as simple as just categorizing content, whether it be structured or unstructured, in a way that it could be found and indexed, and frankly give your search engine something consistent to work with, or flagging a record for a records management system in a particular way, or in more advanced use cases, extracting very specific facts based on the context of a document in such a way that they then can be used by other applications, downstream systems, workflow engines, etc. So there really is just a host of opportunity here for handling the full range of metadata. And I think that's an important takeaway for everybody here today. All metadata is not the same. There's different sources of it. It can be already in your system. It can be being put in by users. It can, in fact, be extracted contextually from documents, or in some cases, actually synthesized. Going down the list, if you will, kind of in the order that most people think about it, is first passive metadata. And that's the metadata that I think we're all kind of used to and comfortable with, and we think about when we talk about metadata management efforts. It's all about the dates, the field names, the format, who put it there, etc. And that's an important foundational effort, if you will, in most enterprises, and what typically gets attacked by data initiatives as they're starting up. But unfortunately, in many cases, it never gets beyond that, because let's face it, it's hard work. You have a often decades history of systems with things named all sorts of different things, and it's very hard to just pull that all together. But our approach is a little bit different again here. It's not to focus on that passive metadata and report on it, but kind of take a go forward approach on making sure that the metadata is created consistently going forward, while at the same time being able to understand what's already in your systems without having to force the organization through this huge rationalization, normalization process where everything tries to get squished into one homogeneous mass, if you will. We're very much about being very practical about approaching this whole area of metadata management. And that brings us to semantic metadata. And what's that? Well, semantic metadata takes metadata management one step up the value chain, if you will. With semantic metadata, you're not interested just in the raw value, but rather its relationship to other data, whether it be an alternate label or a synonym, or being able to understand even the structure of the different terms and their relationship to one another. And that's the importance of semantic metadata, being able to capture those relationships. Lastly, we talk about active metadata. And that's really the metadata that's under change in your systems, or in many cases is even synthesized from other metadata and the context of a particular document. And in my way of thinking about this whole area, frankly, it's that active metadata, that semantic metadata, that enables you to really tap in to the value of a metadata management effort. That's where we really should all strive to go. So how do we get there? And what kind of tools are available to manage all of this? Well, we wouldn't be here today if Semaphore, our platform, didn't address that. But what does Semaphore do? Well, you can kind of think of it as something that handles the language problem that all your applications have. Semaphore deals with the ambiguity and the confusion of language, or languages, in fact. And you can kind of think of it slipping into your architecture between applications and information sources. It's a semantic middleware, if you will, that is made up very modularly, and at its base is a knowledge model management function. That's kind of our foundation. And that's the area that you'll see Steve in a little while get into and use to start to pull together a semantic data catalog. But that knowledge model management function enables you to capture not just the vocabulary of your business, but also the physical and the conceptual and the logical models, and put it all together. That then in turn feeds our natural language processing rules-based classification stack and fact extraction frameworks. But probably more important than any of that, from the perspective of getting value out of it, is the way we allow for the integration of those pieces of that metadata and allow it to be accessible to other downstream systems. And again, Steve will touch on that in a couple of minutes. So with that, let me hand it over to Steve, and he'll get a little bit more into the semantic data catalog. He'll show you how it's built, and you'll actually get to see it and understand a little bit more about the main topic for today. So with that, go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, John. So Gartner puts smart logic on the leader's magic quadrant because they recognize that adopting an approach based on semantics rather than a traditional approach provides you with many benefits. Firstly, semantics provides a common language for describing all artifacts within an information ecosystem, from column definitions in the table through applications, department structures, responsibilities, compliance regimes, and all the way up to and including the business glossary. And the conventional view of data governance is to split this into three models: the physical, logical, and conceptual. But using a common language removes any artificial distinction between these assets and providing you with a unified view of your organization. Moreover, this view is based on the contribution these assets make to your business, not simply how they are stored. And given that all assets can be managed in the same way, you aren't forced into the conventional bottom-up approach at first itemizing, enumerating all the databases in your estate. Instead, you can focus on where the value is. For example, first consolidating the logical model by ensuring that all applications, interactions, and compliance regimes are understood. Then extending this down into the physical model for the key applications as required, and or bringing in the business glossary to provide the 360-degree view of your infrastructure, whether or not that's coming from the bottom up, from the physical model through to the conceptual model, or starting in the conceptual model, starting with the business glossary, and working down to see actually how those artifacts manifest inside your organization. So adopting an approach based on semantics also opens up a whole spectrum of solutions, which data governance, metadata management are merely a part. So implementing a semantic data catalog, as I will show you in the as I'll show you in the demonstration, is the first step towards embracing for the next generation solutions, such as enriching documents with semantic metadata or aboutness, and enabling semantic search and discovery, using semantics to extract actionable data from documents such as facts, from documents such as contracts, applications, specifications, manuals, etc., and therefore enabling deeper analytics. And it's only by embracing semantics and embedding meaning throughout your ecosystem that organizations can benefit from new developments such as knowledge graph and cognitive assistance. So let's take a look at closer look at what a semantic data catalog is and how you can put one together. So in its simplest form, a semantic data catalog combines the data definitions in the physical model, the business data catalog representing the logical model, and the conceptual model, which is generally represented by the business glossary. Now, the data definition represents a structure of key applications and repositories. Elements of the data definition will typically be databases, tables, views, and columns, and this information is typically maintained by the IT department. And Semaphore provides the ability to import this data straight in from CSV or Excel. Now, while the data definition is concerned with describing the data at rest, the business data catalog describes the organization of the data assets within the context of the business. For example, which systems are used by different lines of business, which teams are responsible for the administration of these systems, which teams can update these systems, who is responsible for regulatory compliance in these systems, and which compliance regimes apply. And this will be maintained with input from multiple stakeholders. across the organization. And we believe this is the core of your metadata management and data governance strategies. Now, our demo will focus on the interaction between the business data catalog and the other parts of the semantic catalog, including how we can use Semaphor's market-leading data enrichment tools to automate some of the modeling for compliance regimes, for example. Now, the business glossary contains all the definitions that are relevant to the business and is best maintained by subject matter experts across the organization. And Semaphor's collaboration tools allow this to be done in a controlled manner. Now, bringing in the business glossary to the semantic data catalog is essential, as this is how all the artifacts in the previous two levels can be understood in the context of what they mean to the business. And as a fully featured semantic model manager, Semaphore allows these definitions to not only be maintained and socialized within an organization, but also actually put to use, whether that is used to mark up documents with terms from the business glossary, or as we'll show in the demonstration, link the business glossary to the logical model so we can see how terms actually map onto your business and onto the physical model to see how those assets are indeed organized. So this is what we mean when we say that a semantic data catalog provides a unified view across your business. As all the elements can be defined using the common language, you can show what we refer to as a semantic lineage. So this is where we're tracing the meaning of a table in the physical model through the team that uses it in the logical model to the business function that the team fulfills, and therefore to the ultimate decision maker who should be contacted about any changes to that system. And that can be done with a simple query using industry standard tools such as Sparkle. So I'm shortly going to demonstrate how we can put together and use a semantic data catalog. But first, I should probably explain much more about our product, Semaphore. And Semaphore provides three main capabilities. Firstly, the collaborative management of all the models used in your organization, whether or not they are taxonomies, ontologies, business glossaries, controlled vocabularies, data catalogs. They're all managed using the same set of techniques and they're all represented in the same way. And we use the term knowledge models to describe all of them, as collectively they do represent the institutional knowledge within your organization. Now, once managed centrally, these knowledge models can actually be used in multiple line of business applications. As John said, you can implement Semaphore as effectively semantic middleware within your organization. So you could use this to enrich, extract, and harmonize information held as unstructured or semi-structured text. And this is information that could be key to your business. It's traditionally beyond the reach of most analytical tools. And Semaphore also allows you to use semantic techniques to apply them to your business problems. For example, if you have multiple teams working in similar areas, maybe geographically separated, they can leverage each other's knowledge, leverage each other's terms of reference, each other's vocabularies, and therefore you can reduce rework, improve discovery of assets, and that sort of thing. Applying semantics can allow deeper analytics as well as implementing process automation, for example, where those analytics and that automation is based on the understanding of the data, what it means, not its representation. And lastly, Semaphore is the only product that's happy performing these three tasks at scale. Whether or not that is handling millions of concepts in multiple knowledge models, processing decades of legal material, or handling news articles in real time, we'll do that for leading organizations around the world. Right, so that should be the last of the slides for now, anyway. And I'll be showing you how to put Semaphore in action. I'll mostly be showing you the collaboration and model management components, but also show you some of the enrichment capabilities when we look at data governance and compliance regimes. The scenario I'd like to demonstrate is how a manager can augment a business data catalog with data definitions and a business glossary to create a holistic view of the enterprise. We'll start with by creating a semantic data catalog, pulling in the logical and physical models, showing how links across models can be used, show how we can model regulatory frameworks, and finally, how we can use our enrichment capabilities to automate some of the process around maintaining compliance in that area. And we should have plenty of time for questions at the end too. So let me now move my screen over to and switch screens. Excellent. So this is Semaphore. This is actually running Semaphore version 5, and we have everything. All our capabilities are accessible through a single screen. So I have here the green boxes are the modeling side, the collaboration, the management of knowledge models. Blue is the classification component. It's using these models and NLP techniques to enrich textual content. And the yellow panel is around using the model to assist in discovery. Now, these two panels on the right-hand side, these are our test interfaces. So they are looking at, so the Semaphore's transactional components, they run as services, so they're happily churning away in the background, processing and doing what they're supposed to do. These are just windows for seeing how, providing monitoring or analytic diagnostics. But I am going to run the model management tool, so I'm going to click here, and now we come into running Semaphore Knowledge Model Manager. So all these little colored boxes, these are different knowledge models. These can be used individually, these can be used collectively. We can also link them together, so you can segment a knowledge model into areas for ease of maintenance. And we can apply color schemes to tell them apart, and we can also provide tags. So I want to see everything that's relating to the business glossary, for example. I can select the business glossary tag, and I can see the four models that go to make the business glossary. But I'll be coming on to that shortly. So let's first thing we want to do is, so I must stress before I go any further, these are all, even though these models are used for different purposes, so some of these are used for extracting facts, some of this is a business glossary, this is modeling data governance, these are semantic models for providing aboutness, they're all stored the same way. We don't have a sort of structure that's different just for a data catalog. They're all managed using the same set of techniques. Right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new model, and I'm going to call it Semantic Data Catalog. I'll just pick it from a list. I can assign tags. Let's give it the Semantic Data Catalog tag. Give it a color. It's a nice purple. And we have additional options as well. We can provide the URL, the base name, and things like that. And of course, we'll set access to it. But let me just now show it. Yep, and it's now sitting there. So let me go into the model now. So we said that all the models are the same, but what we do in this case is I'm going to prime it with some definitions, which are particular for the data catalog application, data copy application. So this is what we call a linked model. It just contains some definitions. And I'm going to start with the logical model. So let's pull that in and save these. And then we'll view the model itself. So this is what a knowledge model looks like within Semaphore. On the left-hand side, you have what we call concept schemes. So we have actors, systems, and systems by function. And these are just different views into the model. We're not reinforcing any hierarchy here. So this just lists all the systems. This will be listing the same systems, but it'll be showing them by function. And so if we want to search for example, let's say SharePoint Intranet, we can search here, and it'll open up the definition for SharePoint Intranet and show it where it sits within the various hierarchies that we have defined. And you can see here it's part of general systems, part of sales, and part of delivery. This is up here. This is what we call the class. This just defines the attributes of that system, and then we have some properties of that information. But it's really the relationships that we're most interested in. So we have the SharePoint Intranet. It's top concept of systems. It's managed by the IT support department. It's part of sales, general systems, and delivery. It's related to Trello, and it's related to the file share. And this is what we mean by in the logical model, restoring the relationships between the systems and the teams, and looking at things at a kind of a sort of application level rather than diving down to the physical level. So let's look at a team, for example. So something close to my heart, sales and pre-sales. And we say in here, it contributes to Salesforce, contributes to Insightly, and is top concept of actors. But we probably want to flesh that out, and we're going to do that during the course of this demonstration. So let's look at bringing in the physical model. So we're going to go back to our linking menu. And here we have the physical model. So we're going to add that in. Take those link models. And let's go back and look. And now you can see that alongside actors, systems by function, and data definitions, which were present in the logical model, we also have another concept scheme, which is called Schemata. And this is where we're going to populate the definitions of the various databases in the system. And I'm going to do that now because you can see that there is nothing in this model. This is empty. So to do that, I'm going to drop out of looking at the semantic data catalog and physically go and look at the physical model. So when you saw schemata and data definitions, that was part of the logical model. This is a kind of a subset of that. So I can give the IT department full access to the physical model. They can update the tables, update the information there, and that will just be pulled into the semantic data catalog as required. And I'm going to just show you how simple the update process is. So first thing I'm going to do is create what we call a task. And this just allows me to make any changes without affecting other data within this model. So let's and just say webinar import. Just going to give it a name. And we can assign other users to this. So we can assign user permissions at both the model and at the task level. But this is working on my demo server, so I don't need to do that for now. I'm going to create my task, and I'm going to import a spreadsheet. So let me just open up the task, select import, and select the spreadsheet. And this is the spreadsheet I'm going to do. It's a simple hierarchy where we have the application, the tables, the fields, and then the properties of these fields. And I'm going to import this straight into my model. Now we have a wizard that will do this, which I have actually configured before just to save some time. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my copy of the spreadsheet, drop it into here, and say next. It's now asking me questions about the contents of this spreadsheet. So I'm going to add it in under the Schemata concept scheme. I don't need to worry about what it's called because the properties are set from within the spreadsheet. This is the hierarchy, so it sits between the column level 1 and level 3. And then it has various mappings for the fields in the column. So what attributes, how do I want to treat each field? Do I want to treat it as a metadata, or do I want to treat it as a relationship? And so you can configure how you actually handle the spreadsheet in the wizard. And then we're going to select next and select submit. And it'll now pull in the spreadsheet, create the concepts from that spreadsheet, and populate the model accordingly. So that is now here. And so we have Northwind, the tables, the fields, it's all defined here. Let's just show you with the visualizer. So there's a database, here's the tables, and here are the columns in that table. And I'm going to import these into the Martar. So as I said, a task is a work area. I can make all my changes in a task. And once I'm happy with them, once I've tested them, maybe tested them with downstream systems, I'm happy to commit them through to what we call the master version of the physical model. And I can actually segment this so that when somebody who can create the update the task, but they don't have permission to necessarily commit it to master. So we can make sure that only approved changes go through into the system. And I'm happy with these, so I'm going to commit Northwind hierarchical spreadsheet, and I'll commit it to master. And now if we go to the master version of the physical model, I'm sorry, I'm still within the task. Open the master version of the physical model. And now we have the North bin data is fully populated. And so if I now go back into our semantic data catalog over here and open the master for that, now we see our schemata concept scheme is now populated with Northwind, and I have the tables and columns defined as before. But it's not just defined; it's not actually tied to anything. So let's look at the Northwind table, and we want to show who actually uses it. And this is it's a tool used by the pre-sales team. So I can just select the relationship for used by, which is relevant to an application, search for the concept, and it'll look for anything that matches the destination for used by, which is an actor, and I'll select sales and pre-sales team. So now we have, this is our physical model. So this is an artifact from our physical model, but now we are linking through to an artifact that's now in our logical model. And obviously from there, we're off and we're now up into the logical model. So we've gone, this is now our semantic data catalog is covering the physical and logical models. So obviously from here, what we want to do is pull in the business glossary. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you the business glossary itself, which is this model here. And I'm going to look at the master. And we have three functional areas in this business glossary. We have accounting and finance. Sorry, we have three concept schemes. One is functional area. So we have accounting and finance terms, IT terms, operations terms, product related terms, and sales and marketing related terms. We have a concept scheme, which is just looking at everything structured in an alphabetical order. And so these are all the terms in the business glossary. And then we also have in our model the stakeholders and the stewards and the ultimate decision makers for these concepts. So it's looking here, for example, competitive analysis. Here we go. We can see in here now the information, whereas before we were showing you field definitions, and now we're showing you terms relevant to competitive analysis. So a definition, who the owner, what are the related terms, and who the data steward is. That is part of sales and marketing inside this model. Now, wanted to show you a couple of things around, because the main thing about a business glossary, typically they get defined, they get thrown in a silo, and they rarely get reused. But a couple of things within Semaphore that we can provide. One is this is what we call the visualizer application. So you can use this model to start to socialize the model, start to provide the definitions to a wider audience. So this is now a bright, and I can use this to navigate through the ontology. I can see all the definitions. I can see who the key areas are, and you can provide this. This could also be exposed to the wider business glossary. So we have lots of tools within Semaphore for not only using these knowledge models, not only defining these knowledge models, but socializing them and using them as well. And to make that possible, it depends really. It really is, the strong story here is collaboration. Because what you don't want to have to do is have one poor person whose responsibility to understand all of your enterprise. The knowledge is out there, and what you want to do is collect it and provide the ability for multiple teams to contribute. And this is where linked models really pays off, because this is the business glossary, and you saw it covered a number of business areas. But actually what it is three separate sub-models. So there's one maintained by the finance team, there's one maintained by the operations team, there's one maintained by the sales and marketing team. And these definitions, so in this way, each team is responsible for the definitions that they know most about, and there's no danger that they will overwrite definitions in another part of the model because they physically don't have access to it. Let's go back to the master. Now, so let's pull this model into our semantic data catalog. So knowledge model management. back into our semantic data catalog. To linking. And add in the business data glossary. Sorry, the business glossary. Data link models. Let's go back to our master. And now you can see that added into our concept schemes, we have the glossary, the functional areas view of the glossary, and also we have the stakeholders in here. And we can tie concepts from the business glossary now into our logical model, and then ultimately through to our physical model as well. So we had competitive analysis. So I can pull that up. And as I showed you before, we have the definition in here. We have the steward, the owner, and the related concepts in the business glossary, but we aren't actually showing you anything about how this maps onto the business. So what we want to do is say, for example, where is the competitive analysis stored? So it's stored in the SharePoint intranet. And who uses it? Well, it's the sales and pre-sales team. So, sorry, that was the wrong relationship. Pick the one that's relevant. So these are the relationships that are relevant for a glossary term. And it's relevant to actor. So I'm going to select sales and pre-sales team. Let's try that again. Right. So now, if we look at our visualizer, for example. Oh, sorry, let me do that again. Competitive analysis. So again, but this is from the business glossary, but now we're showing two links down into the logical model. We're showing where the competitive analysis physically stored. And so we can follow that link and see who's responsible for administration of that platform. So we know who we might need to talk to if we need to make any changes to how competitive analysis needs to be accessed. We know who uses it most, sales and pre-sales team. And therefore we know what other systems they might be working with. So if there's integration applications, we know what systems they'll need to work with. But importantly, what we also now have is our 360-degree view, because so if you look at the Northwind application, and we're showing here the products table, for example, we can use our semantic data catalog to really see, effectively, as I showed you on the slide, the semantic lineage. So products is part of the Northwind database, so we can follow that link. Northwind is used by the sales and pre-sales team. Sales and pre-sales team perform competitive analysis, and the person whose term, the owner for competitive analysis function is Veronica Larson. So in this way, we're able to trace a series of relationships from all the way from a physical asset all the way through to actually who owns the business function that that asset might depend on. And we're doing that within a standard platform. And this can be extended in any way. So any artifact within your estate can be mapped into and show the relationships to any other. So let's now just to finish this off. Let's look at another concept of the logical model. Let's look at data governance. So we have a data governance model, and I can go to our linking menu and pull in the data governance. And you'll see that on the left-hand side, you'll now have some additional concept schemes. So in here, you will see the compliance regimes that we have modeled. It's very simplistic, but I just wanted to show you the approach. So in here we have various compliance regimes that we need to adhere to. So we have GDPR, for example. So in our concept here, we have use the most common new term GDPR. We have its formal name. We can store reference information, so like the effective date, a Wikipedia URL, definition information, who it issues by. So you can use this as a knowledge base for so people need to, when people need to know what GDPR is, they can come to the model, find the information they need. But the two things missing from here are what it actually covers. And so the purposes of our demonstration, we're saying it covers any email address, any person or any name, or any mention of religion. And what these are actually attributes in the within our natural language processing there. So we have a number of entities that we will look for, and we can extend this using named entities held in semantic models, or by extending these entity extractors. But what we're saying is any document that can, or any document, any piece of content, or or could be a free-form field in a database table that contains anything that matches these entities, that needs to be in a system that's compliant with GDPR. So similarly, if we look at PCI DSS, and we have this is regulatory and credit card numbers, which is again another entity that we have. And then you can create your own internal compliance regimes if you need to. So if you need to enforce Chinese walls, or if you're looking at a potential demerger for part of your business, you can make sure that entities or product names or customers don't appear in parts of the business that are being spun off. And you can use the same approach for export control. So you can define your own entities. And obviously within our semantic data catalog, we can create relationships. So we could decide that the SharePoint intranet, for example, needs to be compliant with GDPR. So I can create this relationship and regulated by, and then fill in GDPR. There we go. So that's fair enough. And I now have yet another set of useful attributes within my logical model. But if you're a particularly large organization or your estate is distributed, you may not be able to maintain these relationships manually, or actually what you may want to have is some kind of a system in place that can enforce your compliance automatically. And this is where the enrichment and the classification side of Semaphore semantic tools really comes in. Because we look at, we can create an operable model, because we can, sorry, I'll rephrase that, because we can define what we mean by GDPR in terms of what it's going to be, what concepts are going to be managed by it. You can also create, using Semaphore, an enrichment process that will actually look for those entities and identify if a document needs to be compliant or not. And you could run that as, if you then use that to traverse, say, for example, a filing system or intranet, you can then see, is there any content in here? Is it in the right place? Or do we need to manage it properly? And we do that using the enrichment engine. So I'm going to go back to our blue panel here. I'm going to open up what we call the document analyzer. And I have here a PDF. It's just called Katie Card 2. Without actually opening it, I have no idea what it is. But what I can do is I can actually drop this into my document analyzer, which has been primed with the data governance model, and I can then send it off, and back will come what Semaphore's read from the document. And so here is the text that we retrieved from the PDF, and then on the right-hand side we have all the relevant metadata that we're extracting. In this situation, we're doing some entity identification, and also we're seeing whether or not the text in this email, text in this expense report needs to be, should it adhere to any compliance regimes? And the answer actually comes back that it does. So, just on a basic level, we found a credit card, we found an email address, we found a name, and that is enough for us to say that it needs to be subject to this document should be subject to GDPR. It should be kept in a GDPR compliant system. And when I'm clicking this box, I'm just looking at the evidence to see what made that conclusion. And we have the email address, we have the name. Also, it's saying this should be a PCI DSS compliant system because we have a credit card number. It's also doing some NLP as well, retrieving some organizations, but we're not actually using that necessarily to enforce compliance. What we are using, as I said, is email addresses, credit cards, and people. So what you could have is a system. You could have this integrated with a SharePoint intranet workflow. So anybody checks a document into the SharePoint intranet. If any of these terms are fired, then you could either flag a warning, or better still, you could actually route that information through to a more secure area of storage, which is compliant with these relevant compliance regimes. So hopefully that's showed you what we mean by not only a semantic data catalog, but also how you can actually put it to use to automate processes, for example, around compliance checking. And with that, I'm going to hand over back to John.
Thanks, Steve. And we'll just take a second here to get the screen to respond. And there we go. So hopefully now you've all seen a little bit about what we mean by semantic data catalog and how semantics has the capability, if you will, to not just transform decision making, but also have an effect on the way an organization does its normal operations. What Steve just showed about flagging items for GDPR is a perfect example of that. That ability to take the physical, the logical, and the conceptual models and put them together in one view creates an enabling technology that simply doesn't exist from traditional data cataloging efforts that are just focused on passive metadata. The big benefit, though, and I think the takeaway for us here today is that not only does this have a lower cost of entry, if you will, but the speed to value, the speed at which you can actually deliver results to your business and to your stakeholders is much faster. We're talking here about weeks to months, not months to multiple years before the business can actually see what's been delivered and get any value out of the effort. And I think that's of huge importance here. And that comes from, frankly, the practical approach we take to all of this, really starting, if you will, with what's the business problem, and then working backwards and pulling in the different models and attributes as required. That gives you really a flexible approach to all of this. You have a semantic data catalog that can be built over time, adding new features as required. You get a consistency from semantics that provides a universal language that can describe disparate systems, and with that, an ability to harmonize your data, regardless of source and what things are called across those different systems. Beyond that, you've got a glimpse of the operational effects that Semaphore can have on your organization beyond just basic data management. And that can, as Steve showed, have effects on compliance regimes, workflow management, and search and discovery of information. Again, we go back to one of the points I made very early in the presentation, that ability to just tag unstructured content and feed consistent metadata into a search engine. So frankly, it can do its job as you would have expected it to be able to do all along. So with that, I'd like to just sum up and hopefully leave you with a thought that, you know, this might be a bit of an unconventional approach, but it's something that's worth considering. Not necessarily instead of your traditional data management, data cataloging efforts, but something that can easily run in parallel to those and leverage, frankly, a lot of the artifacts that are produced by them. As I said in the beginning, we're in Gartner's Magic Quadrant for the simple reason that we're business focused and, if you would, SME focused. We're doing and producing metadata for the business and for the SMEs in your organization to use and use directly, not just for the data scientists. And with that, we'd be happy to take the remaining couple of minutes to handle some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, John and Steve, for a great demo and a great presentation. I have a couple of questions for you guys. So the first question is there any automation or automated way to ingest metadata from a database, for example, instead of dumping it out into an Excel spreadsheet and then loading it in? And
Quick
Steve,
answer if I'm unmuted. Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Very simply, the answer is there's no automated way, but we do have APIs available. So you can post information into Semaphore. You don't have to dump it to CSV and import it. But the reason why we've kind of taken the approach we have is we're trying to focus more, as I said, on the logical model and the semantics of the business. The tracking the assets is a useful function, but almost every system on the planet exports to Excel. So we just allow you to import Excel into Semaphore, and we'll build the model from there.
Thank you. I have another question. Starts out with great demo. So thank you for that. How would you handle outside linked data in the business model? For example, say there's a team assigned to track all employees and they save this information in a SQL database. How would I link to that SQL data from Semaphore?
That's a great question. There are a number of ways to do that. One is to basically you can create models that represent the SQL data in Semaphore. So Semaphore can scale to millions of concepts. So if you want to store all your employees in there, you can do that. Some companies do actually take that approach. But the other way is to perhaps store in your logical model the details of the SQL server that holds that information, and then you kind of make a call to that system to extract information. And the third way, which is actually something we've started to bring in to the product itself, is we're using Open Refine reconciliation service. So you can start to look at from the context of a semantic logical model, data held in different types of stores, so non-semantic data, and use the reconciliation service to resolve those links to systems that are data that's held in other systems. So right now, it's a work in progress, but it's one of the targeted focus areas for the next major release of Semaphore.
Okay. Does Semaphore support API calls so that redirects to their app can be made as a service?
Yes, every component I showed you every component of Semaphore, everything I've showed you is wrapped up by API calls. They're sort of RESTful. If you're a REST guru, you may say, well, that's not quite REST, but the idea is it's all HTTP POST or GET based, and everything is accessible generally through at least two techniques.
Cool. And what other use cases like this have we experienced in the industry? I'm not, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, almost yes. Almost every almost every use case. So Semaphore is very much a platform, very much a horizontal application. We've used in a variety of industry verticals. There are a variety of applications from customer experience, customer support, help desk, through to kind of contract processing and analytics. So they're all using different mixed blends of the Semaphore capability suite. So we used for again, so around managing external data sources. So a particular organization, a media organization, has a large set of partners. They need to know what assets are sitting within different parts of the channel. Another organization wants to, they want to tell the general public about assets that are in use and will be encountered in everybody in the citizens' day-to-day function, but they may not think twice about. And there are important attributes around what these things do, and so they're using Semaphore to actually make that, socialize that information, which is nominally data catalog expressed in terms that its organization uses to monitor these assets. But the general public need to be aware of them, and will have a completely different sets of terms of reference. So that's kind of a long way of saying anywhere you need to enrich textual data, anywhere you need to harmonize vocabularies and show relationships between concepts in different sets of terminology or different subject areas, for example, that's the problem that Semaphore addresses.
And I think we have time for one more question. Does Semaphore support OSLC for the linking?
I do not know that acronym. It's probably my knowledge. So if whoever answers that question, leave your details and I'll get an answer back to you.
Sounds good. Okay, well, that's all the questions I have. And we are closing in on the top of the hour. So I want to thank everyone who's joining us today. And I want to thank both John and Steve for your time and sharing your expertise. And with that, I will wish everyone a good day.
Thank you.